Hi, it's Kamon Reynolds. So it's fall flow time. It is awesome. It's so much nicer to keep bees when the flow is going. They're nicer, the bees are healthier, because even though we feed them to the best of our ability, nothing beats the real deal. And the real deal right now is 4 different types of pollen that I'm aware of, probably more than that. But the main ones are ragweed, which is doing really good. And then you have the ironweed, which was earlier. It's a big purple weeds we have around here. Then we have the wing stem, also known as the golden honey plant, which is one of the best fall flowers around. And then also the goldenrod, which I'm starting to smell a little goldenrod nectar today, so that's really great. And the thing of it is, because we've babied our colonies, some of them need more room. This colony right here, if you watched our videos early in the year, we had a video where we had 2 queens in the same hive, which we've done that a couple times this year, so it might be a little hard to find. I'll leave it in the link below if I can find it. I'll get Laurel on top of that, because if I do it myself, it probably won't happen. I'll forget. But we had 2 queens in this one. We split and sold a nucleus colony off of this one, and then we've given them combs back. They haven't had to draw any foundation out, but now look at them. But we fed them all through our dearth period. And of course, when we split them, that was back in, oh goodness, April. So they've had this whole time to beef up. Now, I have pulled frames of brood. I've made half of a split off of this colony again, where I've pulled from this one and another one and created some of the splits you see down there in front. And several of those are between 6 and 8 frames of bees now. But anyways, what we have going on here, because we have so much incoming foodstuffs, which is a good thing, but also can be a bad thing because our bees are strong and healthy. Let's check out a frame or two. This is the bottom box. We're going to add a 3rd deep box to this. Now, we don't sell fall honey, but we do want to keep our bees strong so they produce plenty of the fall flow. They get plenty off of it, and wow, okay, so look at all this nectar down in here. We've got brood, but there's also shiny nectar down in there. Bees look really good. Just nice and healthy looking bees. Good pattern over here. But this is the bottom box. They shouldn't have a bunch of nectar down in here. Now, not all the colonies are as big as this one, because we've been splitting pretty good. And we'll probably take some frames of brood from this one and make another split. But I see capped brood, capped brood. This second box here, both of these have a good bit of capped brood. You have capped brood over here. There's just bees everywhere. We have to make sure that the colony does not backfill, because they will swarm this time of the year. I've told you before, I'll say it again, bees don't think it's like, oh my goodness, winter's coming up. We did not swarm, because if we do it this time of the year, we have a very high chance of death. They don't think like that. They're like, goodness, look at all this food. Look how big we are. The queen doesn't have any room to lay. See you later, man. And then the beekeeper's like, what? So just always be aware that it can vary from hive to hive. So let's get this next box on. I want to show you what we're going to do to manage it for the winter. So I am totally fine with overwintering triple deeps, double deeps, singles, nukes. You can do all of those things here in Tennessee. No problem. There's a couple things that you have to do. You have to have plenty of young, healthy bees. And what I mean by plenty is a good sized cluster. So a nuke box, you probably want at least 4 frames covered with the young bees going into winter. They need to be young and healthy. They need to have plenty of nutrition. That's the other key. So plenty of young bees, good healthy cluster, contact with plenty of food. And you have to have dead mites, because if you have decently high populations of mites, they don't just stay on one bee all winter and like, oh, this bee's good. No, they feed on it for a little bit. They hop over into another one. And those bees they get fed upon, they don't make it through winter. And so if you have a high mite load, you start off with a halfway decent sized cluster, all winter long those numbers are being chipped away, and then when your bees start brooding up into spring, that affects how effective your colony is at making a big honey crop. And that is why when we have people that are saying that they're not making much honey off of a spring that we have 100 and something pounds per colony, it's because our bees were huge coming out of winter. It makes a big difference. I want to see on a hive like this. So let's say we don't do anything to this at all. other than what we're going to be doing today. I want to see at least, come January, come early February, minimum 10 frames of bees. I would like to see more than that. I'd really like to see at least 12 frames of bees. I want big giant clusters, because the more bees we have clustering in this hive, when that queen starts laying, when that maple pollen comes in February, the more space they can heat up, the more brood she can make. And the more brood she makes, obviously the bigger the hive gets quicker, and the bigger they get quicker, the more resources they bring in, not just for our own honey production, but also for the bees as well, because they can produce more bee bread, they can do all of those things. And strong, healthy hives are just, you can do all kinds of stuff with them. You can raise queens with them, you can make splits off of them, you can do all kinds of stuff. So this colony right here, check this out. I love all the new white wax up on top. They're already capping this up in here. There's nothing but honey and a little bit of bee bread down in there. Yeah, I mean, look at all that nectar right there. Man, I love it. Nectar flow beekeeping is the best. Unfortunately, we only get that for a certain degree of time, but this one's shaping up to be pretty good because we haven't had a whole lot of rain to where it's kept them in the hives and also washed any of the nectar out. No missed opportunities. So what we're going to do now, to make sure this colony doesn't swarm and also to max out its honey potential, we're going to be adding this box right here of drawn combs. Now, we're not planning on taking a honey crop from this colony. What we'll do is we are going to take the surplus that this colony will make, and they will make surplus. I mean, they're not too far removed from being able to overwinter on what I've got in here, because once they take all that they have in here, if they were to put that all together, that'd be about enough to overwinter. I want about 60 to 70 pounds, but you know, it varies from place to place. So we're going to stick these right here so the queen has plenty of room to lay. So we've got, let's see, 3, 6, we need one more in there. And we're going to take these frames that have, well, let's grab some foodstuffs frames. I don't want to haul any brood up in that next box. One thing we want to do is make sure we don't get the queen up here. That's what the excluder's for. I want to make sure the queen stays down in here. That way when I pull these honey frames later, it's not going to be an issue about having to find the queen. Alright, this is all nectar over here. Wow, did you see that nectar come out of there? See if you can see this. Oh, that smells good. Alright, so let's get these brood frames over here back in their place. So we're doing a couple things here. One, we are creating more room for this queen to lay, which is very critical because that's one of the main things that causes swarming. And they will swarm this time of the year. That nectar smells good. And we're also giving them more space for all this honey so they can produce surplus. Because what's going to happen is this colony, just like several we had last year, are going to make too much honey for our winters. And, you know, we'll probably take a tiny bit just for our own use because we really don't sell fall honey. It's just not as good as spring honey. But ultimately, if we have this full deep box full of honey and this colony doesn't need it because this is all packed, maybe we'll take 1 or 2 for this colony, swap them out with something below that's emptier, more empty, and then those little guys down there, maybe a couple of them don't pack enough going into winter. And we can just pull a frame of honey out and bee bread and chuck it right in there. And we do that all the time. It's an easy way to do it. Now, some of you will ask, well, why don't you just use feed? Well, I could. And honestly, the bees would probably be just fine. But we don't really have a good market for our fall honey. I mean, I could probably sell it to a guy that would buy it by the drum. But I'm okay with letting the bees have that going into winter. I really think that it pays big dividends going into winter with big clusters off of the real food. And they grow bigger coming out of winter. And I make a bigger honey crop because of it in the spring. You know, that's just my opinion. But I think that's pretty close to 9. No, it's not. And that's why we got this thing right here. Alright. We want to get these nice and spaced out because they're going to fatten those combs evenly if we use this spacer. There we go. I mean, I was way off. And this is not anywhere close either. Alright, there we go. I've got it a little bit too much this way. So now we're going to smoke those bees down and throw the excluder on. We won't have to worry about that queen getting up in this third box. So I'm telling you, if we would not have thrown this box on, and we've got several that have 3 in here, we'll still probably pull at least 1 frame of brood from this colony minimum. Help beef up a split we already made, or maybe take them from a couple hives and create a whole new split. We're definitely doing splits still. And then we'll space this one out the same, and this colony will be much better for it. So anyways, this is just some of the stuff that we do to help produce more honey for our bees to overwinter on, to help our bees not swarm this late, because they definitely will do it. Now, they don't swarm as big. That's one thing I failed to mention, is that in the spring, they'll take like 60-70% of the hive and just shoo, gone. But in the winter, in the fall, late summer, it doesn't seem to be as bad. Usually, it seems to be more around the 30-40% range. And probably because the nectar flow is not as intense, at least here, but I don't know. That's just things I've observed. I have no data to back that up. Now, I do have data to back up the 60-70% in spring. But anyways, alright, so this hive is ready to go. The spring flow, the fall flow has just started up. So hopefully they'll fill that up pretty good, and this colony is going to overwinter awesome. So thanks for watching our videos. If you have any comments or questions about fall flows or wintering in Tennessee, leave them below.